Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lakshmi's Leadership Lounge. And as you know, the future of work is changing. And now, more than ever, is the time we evaluate the way in which we lead ourselves to prepare for the future. This is why we are bringing you a series that showcases a plethora of leaders who have inspired us by redefining the way they lead. So join me, Lakshmi Praturi, on this journey as I take a deep dive into the lives of these trailblazers and their unique take on leadership. So today, I'm going to be interviewing Rahul Sethuram. Rahul is a serial entrepreneur, is a software engineer focused on the Ethereum blockchain. Rahul was born and brought up in the tech-centric Silicon Valley in the midst of all the development that's going on, and has recently moved out of the USA to spend time in Dubai and Europe. So he's truly a globetrotter. He started his career by building electric vehicles at Tesla, but really moved quickly into his current passion, which is leading to the future of finance. You'll learn more about him as I ask him the questions. So with that, welcome, Rahul.
Hi, glad to be
Hi.
here. Thanks, Lakshmi, for having me.
So we are very excited to learn about your journey today, Rahul. In our earlier conversations, you said that you always loved cars since you were a kid and wanted to be a mechanical engineer. So why did you change your mind and choose to study electrical engineering at UC Santa Cruz?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story, but like you said, I was very passionate about cars. Cars were like my, thing when I was a young kid. I always loved it. And I said, my dream is to work on cars and build cars. So that's what I want to go to college for. So obviously, I thought the ideal career path is to become a mechanical engineer so that I can start to design cars. And I told my dad that, and this was back, in like the early 2000s. And my dad said, you know what? I don't think you should do that. I think by the time you grow up, cars are all going to be electric. So I think you should be an electrical engineer instead of a mechanical engineer. And so, I listened to him. I respected my dad. I looked up to him so much. So I was like, okay, I think you're right. I will do that. So that's how I started my journey into electric cars. And this was pre-Tesla, pre-anything. Nobody even knew about electric cars back then. So then, throughout college, like even while I was in college doing electrical engineering, that's when Tesla started. And so that's when I decided Tesla was my dream job. And I'm going to do everything I can to work at Tesla because that is like a company that I admire and respect. And that's the one thing I want to do.
It's so interesting. I think what you're saying is important for all the students. I keep telling students that don't study something that's popular today. Study something that will be popular by the time you get out of college and work for 2-3 years, because you want to prepare yourself for that. And good, you listen to your dad, who himself is a prolific serial entrepreneur, and an investor. So good, you listen to him.
And
Now
it's hard to do that, especially because, how are you going to predict the future? But there are some things that you could see, and, if you really see and you make a big bet, that's really how you can hit it big on some of these opportunities that are going to show themselves.
Now you get your dream job. You did go to Tesla. You worked there for a while. And then you decided to become an entrepreneur in a completely different field of finance. Like, why?
Yeah, so that's another thing. So, like I said, my dad has been always a huge inspiration and role model to me. So he was an entrepreneur. I always knew that entrepreneurship was going to be my thing. Really, like when I was working at Tesla, it was basically to get experience so that I can start my own company in the future. And, it would have normally been the path to maybe do something in electrical engineering, in cars, electric cars like that. But it just happened to turn out that I got kind of addicted to the finance side of things because I was getting stock options at Tesla. Tesla was a public company. I was like starting to make some money in stocks and learn how to kind of manage my money. I got really interested in like personal finance, stocks, that kind of thing. And then I actually met my co-founders of my next job after that. And we started to like talk about some ideas that we could do. And we decided, there's kind of a gap in the market for a social network for stock traders. something that's like targeted towards people that are trading stocks, where stock traders can share information. So with that, I thought it was a good enough idea to kind of, I was looking at that point for an exit, and kind of like, this was like a low hanging fruit idea. In looking back on it, that's kind of how it was. It was low hanging fruit. It was a way for me to jump into the startup world.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd worked at
Now,
Tesla for a while at that point. So at that point, I had kind of made it clear that I was ready to leave and move on.
yeah. So you do Tesla, then you actually start a company which is in the, creating this social network for stock traders. From then you actually had many, many pivots. Your entrepreneurial journey had many pivots. And now you founded a company called Connext. So tell how it went from uh, stock trading to Connext.
Yeah. So then after that, I did have some pivots, like you said. We got acqui-hired. I got into other industries like cloud security. Then I was doing some other things like tax related. And then this was right around like 2017. So right around the time when Ethereum was like just getting started. And there was like some news about it, but nobody really knew. And I was always like, I was pretty well tied into like finance, fintech, and the technology behind it. So I didn't really catch the like initial Bitcoin wave, but Ethereum was something that was like coming up as sort of like a programmable version of Bitcoin. And since I'm a software engineer and a tech at heart, I got really interested in the technology behind it. So then I started learning more about it, diving into it. I did some hackathons. So I did a hackathon project with like some people from all over the world to like just learn about how Ethereum works. And then I started going to meetups, and eventually I met my like current co-founders of Connext. And basically, long story short, that's how it ends there, or got there.
Yeah. So now tell me a little bit about Connext, and I know it's something about clearance, and give us a little primer on this. Is a very very new technology, and what is the place for Connext in this whole blockchain ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think actually to a better way to go about doing that would be like how we started Connext, right?
Correct.
So during these meetups, I met my co-founder, and my passion was always to bring this Ethereum technology to the mainstream. There's so many cool things you can do. Like back then it was like token launches. So everyone was like launching these tokens, and these tokens were like really cool to play with and could be like a fundamental part of the application. But there was no easy way to get the token. So what we decided first with Connext is we're going to make an easy way for everyday users to get these tokens. Then as we started to get into that a little more, we realized that actually the problem isn't that users can't get the tokens, that the Ethereum network itself is not scaling properly. So if too many people try to use it as once, if like an application gets too popular, the whole network just comes to like a halt. Every transaction becomes very expensive and slow. So that was the first problem we solved. So we pivoted into scaling solutions. Then what we were realizing is we're competing with all these other people to build these scaling solutions. So then we were like, okay, so really what's going to happen is there's going to be multiple different scaling solutions, even multiple different blockchains. And there's going to be this environment of like unconnected, essentially liquidity, which means all this different money on all these different blockchains. So now the next pivot of Connext and where we are now is we're building an interconnectivity layer between all these different blockchains and scaling solutions on Ethereum itself. So, to go to your point about clearance and settlement, the one thing blockchains are really good at is settlement. Like once something settles on the blockchain, it's done, it's final, nobody can change it, nobody can tamper with it. That's the point of blockchains. But that happens slowly, and sometimes it can be costly. So what we're trying to do is build an ultra fast clearance layer on top of all these different blockchains that is backed ultimately by the security of the settlement of the blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like in olden days when you deposited a check, it would take 2 weeks to clear, right? Because they had to call somebody, clear it, and all that. And now because everything is digital, clearance is much much faster. So it's because of all the technology that's used in the back end. In the same way, you're providing all that layer so that you don't need to wait for those 2 weeks or whatever, and it can be cleared much more.
Exactly. It's kind of like what Visa does. So Visa settles in the background with the banks, like, the
Correct.
days later, but they let you spend the money instantly, get what you need instantly because they're doing the clearance through their network. So
That's even a better comparison. Yeah. So now let's talk a little bit about Ethereum itself. Give us a little bit of a primer on Ethereum's proof of work and proof of stake, and what's the difference that Ethereum has. There is things about smart contracts, etc. So tell us a little bit about what sets Ethereum apart.
yeah, so I guess the number one thing before I talk about proof of work, proof of stake would be the smart contracts, the programmability layer. So basically, Bitcoin can only do one thing. You could transfer something, a number, which represents your money from this to this. And that's
Yeah.
all you can do. So it's really good for that because you could transfer and then the number represents the amount of Bitcoin. But
Mm-hmm.
Ethereum took that. So you don't just transfer numbers, you could transfer state, which, this is, I won't get too much into the details, but what that enables is it enables full programmability so that you can program things on top of this blockchain, which is a very good like settlement layer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that enables a whole world of permissionless finance applications. Like now you can have automated loans. So one really easy example, and the example I like to give is this concept of lending. So you can put down some collateral, which in this case, or like currently is like other cryptocurrency, like Ethereum or other cryptocurrency. You put it as collateral, and then you can lend something with that collateral. So I can put collateral in and I can take money out. So normally if I want to take out a loan at a bank or something like that, I would have to get all this credit checks, get all this approvals, even if I have like a house as a collateral, right? But with Ethereum, this whole process can be completely and utterly like transparent, automated, doesn't involve anybody else except you and the blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, there's been a news today that Elon Musk, uh, uh, not today, a little while ago, Elon Musk made a statement saying that Tesla will no longer accept Bitcoins because the Bitcoin mining is really bad for the environment, etc. So tell us a little bit about, there is the way Bitcoin mines versus Ethereum mines in terms of the amount of power that is needed, etc. So, tell us a little bit behind the mining of Bitcoin and how much energy it uses and why is it bad for the environment?
Sure. Yeah. So Bitcoin uses this concept of validation and mining called proof of work, which literally means the way that the network is secured is based on the amount of work that the computers are doing to prove that they have done the proper amount of validation on a transaction. Um, what this means is that more and more powerful computers are required to make the network more secure as it grows. And it incentivizes people to get more and more bigger computers to be more competitive as miners. If you're a miner, you want to make more money, you have to get more hash power, which means you have to get a more powerful computer, which means it's going to use up more electricity. So these Bitcoin mining farms are just like, huge energy like consumers, and they're just like basically like consuming insane amounts of electricity. And of course, if this electricity is not like clean electricity, it could be like coal powered electricity or something like that, then it's going to be horrible for the environment. And that's what Elon is getting at. And that's what all, kind of like the narrative has kind of come to that of Bitcoin. Ethereum currently is also doing proof of work, but Ethereum has a big upgrade in progress, which should be coming out within the next few months, even, which is called proof of stake. So it changes everything. So now you don't even need powerful computers. Anybody can run these staking nodes at their own house. You could run it on an old laptop. You could run it on a Raspberry Pi. So you can run it on very small, like modern, cheap consumer hardware, and you could be a part of the validation and mining network. So that changes everything. And now there's no longer an energy consumption issue at all.
And I think, in some ways we have to look at this, like if you look at cloud computing, if you look at the way we are going about it, that also requires huge data farms and things like that. So I think what this has brought to conversation, at least, is that we need to look at what's happening in the back end also, how things are processed and how much power are we using to run what we need to. I mean, of course, Tesla itself consumes a lot of electricity, but as you said earlier, is it renewable energy or is it, coal powered energy? There's just so many things that we need to think about. But I think instances like this make us question a lot of the things and look at
Like
the
one,
background.
yeah, one counterpoint to Elon's argument is how much, like what the sustainability level of US dollars is. You're literally printing it on a piece of paper. So
Right. Yeah. 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 I mean, that's why people are saying we will go to Ethereum or something else, because there is a whole fundamental question of the government decides how many, how much paper you want to print, right? So that's a whole conversation about, cryptocurrency to begin with.
absolutely.
Now, sorry, go ahead. You're going to say
Oh,
something.
no. I was just agreeing with you, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
So I think things like this make us stop and question, which is very, very important at every given point of time. Not follow any one technology as religion, but just always question things. Now, there's a lot that you talked about your own personal journey, and what are some of the lessons that failure has taught you?
So from failure, I think one of the big things I learned is from startup failure, I guess, like looking back, I can kind of
Right.
think about what all the ways that we failed and stuff like that. And the main thing is, for when you're doing a startup or kind of like any idea, you could probably apply this to a lot of things in life, is you need to be able to validate your ideas quickly. You need to get them other people looking at it, and you need to basically like get out of your own head, out of your own kind of ego, and you need to kind of like leave that at the door and give it to other people and let them like really put their money where their mouth is. Because until other people start using it and like tell you how it is and like show you how whether or not your idea is good. So I think that's the
Mhm.
number one thing, and I've applied that everywhere. Now at Connext, our main, our like one of our big, MO is always to get customer feedback as quickly as possible. Like, don't think about things in a bubble.
Yeah, yeah. And also about that, getting customer feedback, for a software is easier to do. I mean, I come from a hardware world, and there you are trained to say, unless the chip really, really works, you cannot release it. Whereas in software, you can have a release and work with your customers and keep improving it. That's the privilege of having, doing things on software. So I think what you said is really true in terms of the more people try and give you feedback, you can continuously improve.
Yeah, and
Um,
one more thing to add to that also is I've talked, I when I'm at Connext, I try to socialize with a lot of peers, like other CTOs and people who are in these leadership positions, about how they hire and what their hiring process should be. And one really good piece of advice I got recently is you should always look, when you hire, you should hire a failed startup founder. So a
yeah,
founder of a startup that has failed, because those people will have lessons they've learned and they can bring, similar insights like what I had with the customer feedback. Somebody else might have a different insight from what they learned from their startup. So put
right.
all those together, then you'll get a successful startup in the end.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. I think failure is the best teacher, actually. And it, also sets you to have a little humility instead of thinking, I got it all figured out. I think once we have that mindset with humility, we are constantly learning. Now, along with that, what are some of the leadership lessons you learned so far, in your professional journey?
Um,
I mean, basically, actually, let me reframe that a little bit. You come from a background where your father is already a very successful serial entrepreneur. Even if you just wanted to do nothing, you don't need to worry about putting food on the table. How do you not take that uh, privilege, but be successful as an entrepreneur? What's the thing that really makes you successful in your entrepreneurial journey?
I think part of this, like actually working at Tesla, made me like really see this is, Elon. Everybody knows Elon now, and like how crazy he is, but how he always had it, even when he was not as big as he is now. He had this crazy passion and drive for just doing something he believed in so strongly, and he just went to every single end to make it happen what he wanted. Like Tesla almost failed, and he literally put in almost his last dollars, personal money, to keep it from failing. So I think that level of like passion and vision to just like drive and get there and like get people, like the people at Tesla were there because they loved the company. They didn't care about the money. They didn't care about how hard they had to work. They just loved the company and the vision. And so that was just so inspiring to see. And that's how, when I got into startups, I always wanted to look for things that I was like extremely passionate about, because if you just try to make money or like sell a company, whatever, you may or may not achieve it. Most likely not, because it's not the right incentives, but if you just want to build something really like that you believe in and you believe is really like a good, rewarding thing, that's how you will ultimately, be fulfilled. Whether or not you get success, it will fulfill you in the end.
And I think that's a very important thing, that the drive has to be self-driven. It has to come from you. It's not going to come from outside. It's not going to come from listening to others. It has to come from within you to say, I'm going to make this happen. And if it's not going right, I'll move this way. If not, I'll move that way. But to have that commitment is very, very important, I think. Now, let me ask you a little bit of a different question. You now have teams spread across multiple countries, and you have a development team, you have a design team, everybody is in different countries. So how do you manage to get things done when you're remote teams with different time zones?
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's really difficult thing to do. And still we try to improve on our process all the time. But I think the biggest key is communication. You need to, this goes in with like how you find and how you hire, but you have to hire people that are really like are able to communicate well, like transparent, not afraid to like, take ownership of things, not afraid to kind of say that they messed something up, like go back on something like that. So communication in general is very key. So we try to communicate as much as possible. We have one weekly meeting that we keep like on a time zone that kind of works for everyone. Obviously, we can't make it fully work. It's like very early in the morning for US people, very late at night for India people, but that's the one that everyone has to go to every week. So we all get on the same page, and we can talk about what happened last week, what we're going to do this week. Then we can kind of plan things out. Then from there, since we're a very kind of like self-driven company, so you don't have people micromanaging you and telling you what to do. But we all need to make sure that we know the priorities and are communicating with each other about what the priorities are on the daily basis, so that we can come to consensus on what the real priorities are.
I think I just want to underscore to have these tools of technology that are available so you can keep up to date on what's happening. While you're sleeping, something might have happened, but when you wake up, you know what has happened. So to have that real time update, I think, is very, very important. Now, you are a forward-thinking leader of your generation. You are the new generation that's coming into entrepreneurship, etc. What are some of the things you wish you had to be even a better entrepreneur? Suppose, like once you graduate and come out, there's no training school, there's no school, right? So for you to be a great leader on an ongoing basis, what do you wish you had?
More time. I guess it just always feels like there's not enough time. Things are just like going by too quickly and things like that.
Yeah.
But I
But
guess
in terms of like a coach, or do you wish you could belong to a community where you could reach out to others easily? Or is there a wish list you have? Oh, I wish I had this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that would be, something is like like they always say like investors are supposed to help you like that. You know, VCs always say they're going to add value by like being somebody you could brainstorm with like that. But for in my experience, they never really add that much value in terms of that. So really like, you know, a community of peers that I've kind of been through the same thing as you, that you can kind of all like relate to and talk to. You know, if you're struggling with something, having somebody that you can talk to and have get like actually valuable advice is something that
Mhm.
I have not really found. And, you know, now just thinking about it, because you asked the question, would be very interesting.
Yeah. So let me ask you, like, if you were to put your 2050 glasses, looking to the future, um, how do you think the emergence of new technology is going to change the way people are going to lead, actually?
Um, I guess I've like a strong believer in things like virtual reality. Actually, I think like, you know, it'll kind of defeat the need to really be in person anymore. Like we're already seeing that with like Zoom, but you know, in the
Mhm.
future, you can really be standing like next to somebody when you're on other sides
Yeah.
of the world, and you know, even on other planets and things like that. So I
Yeah.
guess, you know, it would just make the remote communication is just going to be seamless and uh yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So, who are some of the leaders you look up to?
Of course, like we said, my dad, Elon Musk, uh,
Uh,
people like that. I used to think Jeff Bezos, but I don't really like him anymore.
well, and why is that?
I just think he's kind of shown that he's not really like all he kind of cares about is himself. He's a little too selfish. He hasn't really like shown that he has vision beyond that. And you know, I really like that visionary thing. Like Steve Jobs, another one I really looked up to, because him, like
Yeah.
Elon, he just had this like utmost passion and drive and vision that was just so
Mhm.
strong that nobody could stop him.
So now we are at that point where I reverse the tables. You get to ask me questions. So go ahead. What questions do you have for me?
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, so one I was thinking of was, what is your most interesting interview and why? Of course, besides me, but
Yeah, of course. This is a tough one. Each interview is like, you know, uh, uh, um, uh, like having a child, right? It's sort of, you get into the mind of the person and you get something out. But I'll give you a couple of extreme cases. I think that's very, very interesting. On one hand, when you interview somebody who's very well known for one thing, okay, but then you find something else that really makes them take, that's an aha moment. Like when I was interviewing James Cameron, it was at the height of the movie Avatar and stuff, and everybody knew him as a film director. But really, his passion is science, and most of the interview was about science and how he's looking at deep sea exploration and how he wants to be the first one to go to the bottom of the ocean, which he did, later. So, when you work with somebody who's very, very well known, but then you tap into something that the world may not know as much, it's very, very exciting. On the other hand, you have at the other end someone who is not very well known at all, but because of your platform, they become really popular. Like if you take, I don't know, somebody like an Arunima Sinha or Arunachalam, or you name it. There's a lot of people. Like for Arunima Sinha, she's the first female amputee to climb Mount Everest, and or Sunita Krishnan, she's been for 10 years working on rescuing women out of prostitution. They've been doing this, but the minute their story comes onto a digital platform where many people can see it, the impact they can create out there suddenly goes up, and that is what is exciting. So what makes the most interesting interview is what you bring out of it that's
Mhm.
not been there before, or an impact you can create. Because we put Sunita's story online, she raised enough money to build the home for the women she's rescuing that she always wanted to do. So that's what makes an interview exciting, is what impact you can have with it.
Like a side effect almost of
Yeah, like
it.
unintended
Yeah.
effect, of, because the humanity is so graceful, actually. People are looking to find these stories, and there's enough people who can help. If you can enable that, very exciting.
Awesome. Very good. So
Yeah.
another one is, if you had a different career, what would it be?
I have to say this about you. You talked about listening to your dad and doing what he said, right? I look back and I feel, when I was younger, I wish I listened to my dad. I was in a very rebellious mode of whatever he said. I wanted to do the opposite kind of a thing, and he really wanted me to be a doctor. And I really think a lot of times that I think I should have done that, because I think I would have been good at it. And the other thing, he said, okay, if not doctor, at least do engineering. And I was fighting that also. And I went into mathematics. And now, at least I'm in the tech world a lot, but I wish I had that engineering fundamentals that would have made a lot of understanding easier for me. I really have to work very hard to understand technology. So, but at least I brought myself to a place where I can understand how to connect technology. So having that mathematics background really helps. But I really wish I listened to my dad when I was younger, because he could see in me what I couldn't see in myself. And I think, but no regrets. But I really tell people that your parents have your best interest, so don't always fight them. Sometimes listen to them.
Yeah, that's so true. It's not like they're trying to hurt you.
Yeah. And then the other thing I do say, even today, I think when I first saw Christiana Amanpour, I was blown away. I wish I knew journalism was a career. I just didn't know growing up that it was a career. Some of it comes from not listening to others. Some of it comes from just not knowing such a thing exists.
Mm.
So I always in my life felt I wish I was Christiana Amanpour. I mean, I really, that kind of an investigative journalism really gets me. So that's what I do now through people, I think, is through technology. I like investigative journalist in technology and what it can do. But these are the things I think if I could do it all over again, maybe I would think about
Yeah.
these. Yeah.
So then with
Yeah.
this, where do you see yourself in 20 years? Now that we're talking about 2050.
I know. For me, this interviewing people is something I think I will do till I take my last breath. I think I'd be like, because of podcasts and things, even if you're physically unable, you can sit in one place and interview people. Even if you start looking terrible, you can do things through your voice. I think just interviewing people and, connecting the dots is what is super exciting for me. So I always say that I want to be like Abdul Kalam. I was giving a speech on a stage and fell dead like that. Maybe I'll be interviewing somebody in the middle of it. I'll go, that'd be like a great viral video later on or something. I don't know. But that's sort of what I love, is just interviewing people. And like, I just love getting into the minds of someone and finding something that can maybe benefit a lot of others.
Great.
So now we come to a point we want to wrap up today. And before we wrap up, we always talk about how can we continue our conversation with you. So we have something called Ink Tree Seed. So give us an idea of something we can do together after this that could benefit the Ink community or everybody in general. What would you like to do?
So one of the things I was talking about, like with Ethereum, is how it kind of enables this permissionless finance, right? Like all of a sudden, you don't need a bank account to transact money. You don't need, and this enables like a group of people that have never been able to do things like this to do certain things. Like I was touching on it a little bit, like a loan, right? You can get a loan. You can also lend money. You can also invest money. You can also like basically get returns on your investment through these decentralized, permissionless means. So a lot of people don't know this at all. They don't understand it. They don't get how to do it. They don't even know how to start. And because of that, there's like a lot of opportunities that are kind of being that are there for the taking. Like right now, your bank does all this for you and gives you a very tiny interest rate on your money. But obviously, they're a business. They're making a ton of interest. So what
Yeah.
Ethereum and blockchain is, the whole point of it is to cut out these middlemen. There's no need for a bank anymore. You own your money. You can do everything a bank does for you yourself. So I really think what I would love to do is kind of like start a workshop, start like a learning
Mm,
sessions for how to actually get people into this decentralized finance ecosystem, whether it's
mm-hmm.
borrowing money, whether it's like lending money, whether it's like investing, because you don't need a bank account, you don't need much money to get started, and you can kind of like set yourself up for a really good future.
I think that's a great idea. So maybe what we'll do is we'll set up a workshop where people need to show up with some money, and then you actually set up the account, you actually do a transaction, you actually do it hands on. So it'll be a great way to maybe they can send money to each other or something like that. But we can do something. I think that's very exciting. So we'll work on that. So thank you so much for your time, Rahul. I think we've learned a lot about the future of finance, actually, where we are going to go, how we are going to spend, get loans, and on a day-to-day basis, what we're going to do. So thank you so much, and we look forward to following your entrepreneurial journey.
Thank you very
And
much. Had a great
yes,
great
yes,
time. Great.
thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.